Okay, that's great. Welcome, everyone. Excellencies, esteemed colleagues, young leaders. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to our CSW69 Side Event, From Learning to Living, Youth Perspectives on Empowering Young Women in Agri-Food Systems Through Leadership and Training. So this is a side event to the Commission on the Status of Women, organized by FAO with the support of the Permanent Mission of Italy to the United Nations in New York, and with the Permanent Mission of Indonesia to UN in New York. Thank you both for coming today. And my name is Martina. I am working in FAO Office of Youth and Women, and I'm honored to be the moderator of today's event, where we are joined by a distinguished group of panelists and participants, both in person, as you can see, is a very full room, and online, which is also a very full virtual room, I would say. So, grounded in priority area B of the Beijing Platform and Declaration for Action, which is education and training of women. Today's discussion will platform the voices of young women leaders we have the pleasure of having with us. And we will explore the intersection between Sustainable Development Goal 5, namely gender equality, and Sustainable Development Goal 4, namely quality education. We will specifically focus on the critical role of education and training to empower young women in agri-food systems and to catalyze the sustainable change they can bring. This session presents a unique opportunity for us to come together to hear and discuss youth priorities for a future where no one is left behind. We are delighted to have an extremely inspiring panel today, and I hope that each of you will contribute to the discussion. As you know, we also have an open floor discussion at the end of the panel. I would like now to invite the Director of FAO Liaison Office to the United Nations in New York, Ms. Angelica Jacome, to take the floor for her welcoming remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina. Excellencies, distinguished guests, youth leaders, and colleagues. It is an honor to join this side event, the 69th session of the Commission on Status of Women, dedicated to youth perspectives on empowering young women in agri-food systems through education and training. I would like to welcome His Excellency Ambassador Gianluca Greco and Ms. Ida Manmishra for joining us in person, as well as for the other participants that are joining us here in person and those who are joining us virtually. This year marks FAO's 80th anniversary by sharing our legacy, progress, and our vision for the future. On the occasion of this milestone, FAO calls on all stakeholders to intensify efforts to empower women and youth as key agents of change. Collaboration with international organizations, the UN system, governments, private sector, academia, and civil society is crucial to achieve these efforts. Together, we can achieve better production, better nutrition, better environment for a better life, leaving no one behind. Today's session is part of a year-long youth-led consultative process facilitated by FAO's Office of Youth and Women through its World Food Forum Global Youth Action Initiative, a process to empower youth to create meaningful and lasting change by enabling them to voice their priorities. We must see youth as more than our future leaders. They are our present, already leading and sparking change. Youth are not only the beneficiaries, but also the providers of scalable solutions that can shape a better future. Today's event will hear from 3 young leaders who are advocating and working for a more inclusive and sustainable future. I look forward to hearing the calls for action at this event and to see that this important process continues to gather momentum at the ECOSOC Youth Forum and the high-level political forum. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for coming to the FAO office in New York.
Thank you, Angelica, for highlighting the importance of seeing youth as current leaders and not only as future catalysts of sustainable development. We are sure that all the leaders today who are listening and who are joining can really drive lasting change in agri-food systems. It is now my pleasure to invite His Excellency Ambassador Gianluca Greco, the Deputy Permanent Representative of the Mission of Italy, to provide his opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. We're coming from a first week of the CSW where we were often in side events where we speak of big problems that such as gender equality, such as female genital mutilation, such as many other things. And but now to approach the gender perspective also on look into the future. I mean, with the young leaders, with the young female leaders, it's really a little bit reviving. It gives energy, and so it's really a pleasure for me to be here. And it's an honor to deliver the opening remarks to this event, which comes at a remarkable moment as we celebrate and reflect upon the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration, and we stand on the threshold of the International Year of the Women Farmer proclaimed in 2026. Let me recall the Beijing Platform for Action included specific actions to be taken to address the issue of women and poverty, highlighting in particular the importance of policies and programs to enhance the access of women agriculture and fisheries producers, especially in rural areas, to financial services, land, appropriate infrastructures, and technology. Women are indeed at the heart of agri-food systems. They are farmers, entrepreneurs, wage workers, researchers, innovators, and community leaders. Despite their extensive involvement, they continue to face the disproportionate challenges from limited access to resources and finance to barrier in decision-making and persistent gaps in education and training opportunities. Addressing these barriers is not just an ethical imperative, but an economic necessity. In the last 5 years, Italy has strongly invested with our partner countries in empowering women and girls, especially through targeted education and vocational training programs. Recognizing education as a powerful catalyst for development, we have promoted opportunities for young women in research, innovation, and entrepreneurship within the agri-food sector, aligned with the objectives outlined in the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. And this brings me to the core of theme of today's event, young engagement in shaping inclusive, forward-looking agri-food systems. Young voices, perspectives, and ideas are crucial for crafting policies that are inclusive and responsive to emerging challenges. The youth-led consultations that will unfold throughout 2025, culminating in a recommendation paper to be presented at the high-level political forum in July, as we heard, underscore the importance of this process. Furthermore, looking ahead, this conversation connects directly with the upcoming Food System Summit +4. This summit will build upon the commitments launched by the UN Secretary General in Rome through the call of action for accelerated food system transformation. Government, financial institutions, civil society, and the private sector have been urged to engage urgently and collaboratively to harness the full transformative potential of our food systems, addressing the vulnerabilities of those most affected, notably women, rural communities, and youth. In Rome, we committed ourselves in 2023 to collective and accelerated actions. And now, as we prepare for the UN Food System Summit +4 in Addis Ababa, it's crucial that we maintain this momentum. We must ensure youth and gender perspective remain central to the agenda. Italy looks forward to handing over this important process closer to the African continent, ensuring inclusive and geographically balanced perspectives shape our shared future. In closing, let me reiterate that empowering young women through education and training is not simply a matter of equity, it's a cornerstone of sustainable development, a resilient agri-food system. And finally, we are, of course, very glad to be here at the FAO office that is always in our heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those powerful words, Your Excellency, and particularly for emphasizing the vital role of youth engagement in shaping policies. But also, we are pleased to hear Italy's commitment to address the barriers that still persist for young women. And we are sure that your commitment and your work will support young women thriving in the policy arenas, innovation, and research, which are all areas that are at the core of our work as office and as organization. So I am now pleased to introduce Mr. Lorenzo Gentile, the Head of Operation at the FAO Office of Youth and Women and the World Food Forum Global Youth Action Initiative, who will walk us through the process of this year-long consultative gender thematic area that we are undergoing with the Youth Assembly of the World Food Forum Youth Initiative. And we are trying in this process to understand how to leverage the interlinkages among SDGs to support the empowerment of young women in agri-food systems. Lorenzo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Martina, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the panelists and colleagues and youth leaders here in the room, and also to the ones connected online. It's really great to see how many people are online. We said about 200 people, so that's a really good number, and it's a key testament that this is definitely an important issue for youth worldwide. It's really an honor to be here on behalf of the World Food Forum's Youth Assembly Secretariat, that is the platform that is being leveraged for this consultative process and to discuss here the how we can empower young women in agri-food systems through education and training. As we move towards 2026, as it's already been said, the International Year of the Woman Farmer will take place. So this discussion is really comes in a really timely manner. And the Youth Assembly of the World Food Forum is leading a year-long consultation process to engage young people, experts, and policymakers in advancing gender equality and women's empowerment in agri-food systems, and particularly looking at young women, so that specific population group. And this process focuses on 4 Sustainable Development Goals, as was mentioned by Martina: SDG 5 on gender equality, ensuring that young women have equal access and opportunities in agri-food systems. SDG 4 on quality education, recognizing really that education and training are key to the empowerment of young women. And SDG 8 on decent work and economic growth, addressing the challenges that young women face in securing fair and decent employment opportunities in the agri-food systems sector. And of course, all of this is under the framework of SDG 2 on zero hunger and our agri-food systems. Our consultation process, and we have a visual on screen to support this point, kicked off in January 2024 with the participation of 2 young leaders from the World Food Forum Youth Policy Board, that is the group of young leaders that leads the Youth Assembly platform and consultations that take place as part of it, and a young scientist group member of the World Food Forum participated at the expert group meeting on SDG 5. And the insights from that meeting formed the foundation of our work, and highlighting the barriers that young women face in agri-food systems, from unequal access to education and training to the lack of decent job opportunities. And the official launch of the consultation process actually took place in Geneva in late January, where a thematic youth assembly consultation took on supporting women in decent rural employment, gathered perspective from over 200 youth connected online, and more than 30 people participating in the event in person. And through this session, we were able to collect over 20 youth statements that emphasized, on the one hand, the critical role of education and training in expanding economic opportunities for young women in agri-food systems, and on the other hand, the need for an intersectional approach to policymaking that can address the unique challenges that young women face, but also the opportunities that are available for them in the sector. Now, these discussions have reinforced that youth engagement is really essential in shaping policies for the future of our agri-food systems. And we have also learned that centering learning opportunities as drivers of empowerment is a priority for youth, and especially young women. And moving forward, the CSW69 Side Event serves really as our second consultation platform, building on our initial findings and bringing more youth into this conversation. So in the coming months, we will continue this process through first the ECOSOC Youth Forum, where we will be expanding the discussion on the intersection between SDG 4, 5, and 8 within the broader framework of SDG 2, and through an online platform as well, which we will be officially launching today, where youth will be able to submit inputs for our youth recommendation paper that we hope to present and launch at the high-level political forum later in July. And this is especially important as we will be focusing on targeted outreach to ensure that those involved in the implementation, that from our end will be the World Food Forum National Youth Chapters, and Italy and Indonesia are great cases of our national youth chapter, and have been doing great work at the country level. So it's also going to be interesting to see how this can be brought at the national level. And so we're going to make sure that the national chapters are also appropriately consulted and are also their considerations are also taken into account in this consultation process. And finally, through collaboration with FAO and other technical experts from other UN entities, ensuring that our recommendations are informed also by the latest research on women and youth in agri-food systems. So Really, our goal is to create a youth-led actionable policy framework that empowers young women in agri-food systems and supports sustainable development at the local, regional, and global level. And we really invite you all to contribute to this process, whether through consultations, sharing insight, or by engaging through the online platform. Really, by working together, we can ensure that that youth voices are really driving meaningful change in policies that affect young women in agri-food systems. So I'll stop there and I'll hand it back to you, Martina. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorenzo. It was a very comprehensive overview, and I think all participants, both online and in person, now are more familiar with the process. I believe this consultative process can really support young people to be included in the policymaking arena and leverage on SDGs to offer a more sustainable future of our agri-food systems. With this, I think we can move to our panel discussion. This panel will explore how education and training can advance gender equality in agri-food systems and how youth advocacy is crucial to this goal. We are joined by three outstanding young women leaders who represent their youth-led organization and groups. I'm pleased to introduce Ms. Anushka Sinya, who is a globally recognized social entrepreneur, human rights and gender equality activist, and Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree with a special mention in the education category. She has dedicated over a decade to advocating for education, gender equality, and human rights, reaching over 1 million people worldwide. Anushka has received numerous prizes, including the Diana Award, the highest honor for young social impact leaders, in recognition from the World Bank, UNICEF, and UN Women. Today, she's representing UNESCO SDG 4 Youth and Student Network, which is an inclusive and representative platform of youth and students designed to ensure their meaningful participation in shaping global education policies. Please join me in saying welcome to Anushka. We also have Renata Koch, who is a young Brazilian leader in the global climate movement, focusing on gender equality and youth leadership. She's the founder of Empodera Clima, a youth-led advocate organization advocating for women empowerment and climate action in Latin America and the Caribbean. Renata has been a prominent voice for gender and climate for over a decade. And in 2021, she was the first young Brazilian to speak at UN CSW69 opening. A Harvard graduate, Renata has a professional experience with the UN Youth Office, with the World Bank, and with the British Mission in Brazil. She was awarded the Emerging Leaders Beautiful Forces granted by Estée Lauder in 2024, and she got also in Forbes Under 30 that same year. Today, she's representing the major group for children and youth, which is the UN General Assembly mandated and self-organized mechanism for young people to meaningfully engage in UN processes. Thank you for coming today. And finally, last but not least, we have Sarah K. Smith. Sarah is a dedicated champion for youth engagement in agriculture and agri-food system, and is proud to represent Canada as a member of the World Food Forum Youth Policy Board. Having grown up on a farm, she leverages her policy experience to advocate for youth in agri-food systems, speaking at forums like the UN Innovation Symposium for Family Farmers, the World Food Forum flagship event, the Global 4-H Network, the Committee on World Food Security, and TEDx Youth. She is an inaugural member of the Canadian Agricultural Youth Council, a consultative body within the federal government, where she also led the development of the Career and Education Working Group, supporting the recommendations focused on agri-food careers and pathways for youth. She continues to serve on the federal sector engagement table for skills development. And in today's conversation, Sarah is representing the World Food Forum Youth Policy Board. And also, in particular, she's also supporting our consultative process of this year. So thank you all. Thanks for joining today. And thank you all for joining us. We are very eager to listen to your experiences as young leader advocates. So we can start our conversation with Renata. We would like to ask you, according to your experience, why is agri-food system knowledge so crucial for youth and women? And what is the economic impact of enhancing such knowledge?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Martina. And hello, everyone. Hello, everyone online as well. Hopefully you can hear and see me okay. What an honor to be here. Attending CSW has been definitely a powerful experience, but I do think we need to talk more about this intersection of climate injustice and gender inequality and agri-food systems, because I see the climate crisis as the biggest challenge that we have in our generation nowadays, and agri-food systems is, of course, severely affected by the climate crisis, and it's imperative for our survival. So, of course, these are intersections that are crucial, very important, very urgent, and it's an honor also to be with these powerful women here and everyone here working on this intersection. Although I would say it's still very much the minority of the discussions, at least in the spaces that I've navigated. So your question is really important on how and why do we need more young women in these spaces? What's the importance? And so I have a couple of points. The first one, and you mentioned that in your question, is that economic side of things, because I found being in a youth-led organization and advocating for why people should care about gender equality and saving our planet, to me is obvious, but you learn over time how to deal with different stakeholders in this space. So how do you talk with corporations that maybe are in the oil and gas space and have different interests? And I think the economic argument is very, very important. I encourage youth movements to also hone in on that and adapt that speech, because we do need everyone to solve this crisis. We won't be able to do it in silence and isolation. And on the economic side of things, what we've seen is that when women have access to the same productive resources as men, farm productivity and agri-food systems productivity increases, because of course we have over 50% of farmers being women, and we have so many women in this world doing work for climate action, for sustainable agriculture, but we have this unequal access of resources. And of course, in the situation of a climate disaster, which I'll talk more in a little bit, that's exacerbated. And that's a lot of the work that I do in my organization at Empodera Clima to raise awareness of that, because of course, everyone's affected by a climate disaster, whether it's a flood or a heat wave, but there's different communities and different marginalized groups that maybe will feel it first or feel it more intensely. And we have to allocate our resources, our funds, our policies to reflect that. And again, it may seem simple and obvious, but it's not happening across the board. And an example I can use as well is in my home state of Brazil, in Rio Grande do Sul, which is the southernmost state of Brazil. We had the biggest flood we've ever had last year in May, devastated 90% of the state. It was a very difficult thing to see, I'd say, because it showcases this in real life, right? When you experience something like that in your home. I had volunteers with my organization leaving their homes in boats. And so you see that situation, and then you see that the policies are not prepared to deal with that, and specifically to deal with the youth side of things. How are children going to be protected in that space? How are young women and women in general protected in this space? Because what we saw is that people that were more affected got into shelters, but the shelters itself are not prepared to accommodate whether it's young women that are in schools, or women farmers, or people that their homes and their environments are everything they have, of course. But in a situation of being placed in a shelter, having to evacuate their homes, what we've seen is that there weren't, for example, menstrual products available for young women to be able to go through this crisis, or there was even a lot of sexual harassment and abuse. And so the local government had to create immediate kind of urgent shelters for women and children because they were not prepared. And that happened after trauma was already in place, and so many kind of layers of what a climate disaster does in that sense. So that's just to give you an idea. And the agri-food systems connects to that, because my state is the biggest rice producing state in Brazil. So it affected the whole economy. So if we have to use the economic argument, if our decision makers and policymakers are not paying attention to the livelihood argument, that there's people losing their homes and their livelihoods, then we're also losing money in this fight. We're losing the economic leverage that we have through agri-food systems, which for a country like Brazil, is so important. Agribusiness and agri-food systems is, I would say, one of the biggest markets in that sense, but it has to be intersectional, and the policies there have to have that gender and youth lens. So, and I saw an FAO data that I thought it was interesting to bring, that it says that closing gender gaps in agri-food systems could boost the global economy by $1 trillion. So again, there you go, another argument. And that's what we're trying to bring in the youth-led movements, that economic side of things. And so the last thing I'll say on that, about the role of young women in those conversations, is we've seen so many people kind of gathering and changing their priorities or adapting their strategies to talk about climate. But more often than not, and especially in global north countries, in developed economies, the focus has been on climate mitigation and on, of course, what do we do to reduce global warming, which is important, of course, but the crisis is here. I just mentioned a situation that's very close to me that happened. Unfortunately, it won't be the last time. We always have very heavy rains, and we're just kind of waiting on when the next one will happen. But that's why having youth in the space, and young women specifically, is important, because the lived experience and that sense of urgency that people in this space bring, but especially perhaps young farmers, women farmers, people that are in this space and face this every day, can bring to a table to talk about their experiences and their stories. I'd say it's very impactful, and we need to hear more of that as business leaders, as policy leaders, as people in that space, because then we move the conversation to also talk about climate resilience and climate adaptation, which is so important, but it's still not emphasized enough. So definitely consider and bring young women into these spaces, because I think that's what we need the most right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Renata. This was beautifully said. Thanks for sharing your perspective, but also for sharing your personal experience. You know, it's very important for us to emphasize local knowledge, local action, and the real experience of people in a country and in a specific also area really informs the discussion, and then the concrete actions that we can leverage. And also thanks for sharing how knowledge can really impact on our capability to adapt and to be resilient to what happens. So thanks again. So let's move to Sarah. We discussed the importance of educational activities for youth and women. We did in the past through the Youth Assembly. We are doing it today. I would like to ask you your perspective on how can training and skills development programs engage youth in agri-food sector, but also what are the policy considerations that we should make to ensure that these programs really target young people, really target their needs, that we are really responding to what they are looking for.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me. It is a real honor to be here. I think we're all very familiar in this room that these types of issues need those regional and local responses. Obviously, my experiences stem from a Canadian agri-food perspective, from a North American agri-food perspective. So I hope there is the opportunity to translate some learnings, but very much acknowledge that we need to be pursuing these solutions from a regional perspective. When it comes to really looking at those education and those training opportunities, I think education provides us such an early opportunity to engage with young people, to engage with young women when it comes to agri-food systems. I've seen some really strong examples, from a Canadian context where we're not able to have clear examples of agri-food systems in school curriculum, but we've been able to develop programs outside of that provide those tools and resources for teachers to be able to highlight agri-food examples within existing curriculum infrastructure and be able to basically build that base level awareness amongst youth to set the foundation for how they are viewing career opportunities throughout their lives. I think it also has a resultant impact of being able to improve and increase how people trust and understand their food systems. I think we're increasingly disconnected from where our food comes from and how it's prepared, and being able to start early and ensure science-based education is highlighting that is a real opportunity, not only to engage people, as they're considering the direction they want to go in their lives, but also as future consumers to ensure that they trust and understand what their food system looks like. So I think starting early, having that early engagement, and then I think as we look to engage later on in young people's lives as they're moving maybe past post-secondary education or moving into that or a trades approach, I think when we think about the agri-food system as a whole, we often combine how we're looking at engaging people, what skills are needed. And I think it's really clear that there's a need to separate the skills and the approach for primary production versus the rest of the value chain. And in Canada, we face significant challenges around succession planning. We have a very aging farmer population. And so we're frequently talking about what are those tools required to bring youth and new entrants into that role, looking at, access to land, capital, intergenerational knowledge transfer and mentorship to address that. But I think we also deal with a lot of challenges from a labor perspective throughout the rest of the value chain. And I think from that perspective, there's also a lot of breadth and opportunity to engage youth and young women into those positions. And so by splitting how we're approaching those two kind of opportunities, I think it allows us to get really clear and meet people where they're at. I think often we focus on existing agriculture educational institutions for engagement, and we're limiting ourselves from the skills and people that we can engage within the sector. I think I'm a big proponent of whatever you're passionate about or whatever you want to do, there is a role for that within the agri-food system. And so being able to bring in those skills that we're going to need over the next decade, the next couple decades, when it comes to technical skills and engineering, really being able to show the pathways between that type of study and pursuit and careers and long-term careers in the agri-food sector is where I think there will be a big unlock of being able to bring in new people who aren't familiar with it. And so that last piece around how can we focus policy and how can that influence the programs that we're developing, I think we have to get really creative with that skills focus and maybe not approach it from such a sector promoting agri-food perspective, but really getting more individual in how, what opportunities are there for engineers within the agri-food sector? How can we show those pathways? And I think for young women especially, it's important to show that there are people just like them. They can see themselves in those jobs in the sector, that we're making it really clear for what you need to do and how you can get there. We're competing against really clear job and career pathways. If we think of doctors or teachers or lawyers, young people coming out of school know exactly what steps they need to take to get there, what their day-to-day is going to look like, and what their job is going to look like in 5 years. We don't have that transparency within our agri-food system. So how do we start to really clearly develop those pathways, create the micro-credentials or the links to existing programs that allow us to bring people into the system and make it easier for everyone to see themselves and move into positions within the agri-food system. I'll pause there.
Thank you so much. You touched on a very important point, the thing that we are increasingly disconnected from our understanding and the value that agri-food systems have for us. And you were mentioning the knowledge gap. So it's in our interest, in our youth interest, to fill that gap, starting from also the early schools and finding creative ways to show that there are a lot of opportunities in agri-food systems. And it's not a niche. We do not need to be agri-food system native to understand that we are strictly related and or interlinked our agri-food and food systems. So thank you. I think you really show something important, that we all have our roles, and we just need to make it clear to everyone that we can all contribute to this. We are continuing exploring the nexus between education, skills, and economic empowerment with you, Anushka. I would like to ask you, based on your multiple experiences, especially with UNESCO, with UNICEF, and in general in other education and youth advocacy platforms, what are the creative ways how we can be innovative in bringing young people to the to understanding more about sustainable development, about the future of agri-food systems, and also how we can enhance this climate knowledge for empowering young women to access economic opportunities in this sector?
Thank you so much for this question, and I'm so honored to be in the presence of such trailblazing leaders, first of all. So raising awareness about sustainable development is not just about policy papers or UN reports. And I say this because I have worked with my community since I was 10 years old. So I've seen those shifts. I've seen the confusion when I go to a young girl in a rural village in India who doesn't even know English, to her, it's about understanding how these concepts are relevant to her. So we really need to think about making sustainability as a concept relevant and actionable for these communities that we're really trying to focus on. So based on my experience working with all these communities and organizations, the first thing that we need to do, as my colleague Sarah mentioned, we really need to provide a mainstream way of putting climate education into your schools and curricula. So that can be through technical and vocational education and training. So instead of keeping climate education only theoretical, integrating hands-on skill-based learning into national curricula and vocational training programs is what I really want to put an emphasis on, that can equip young women with practical knowledge. One great example is UNESCO's Greening Education Partnership. I don't know if you're aware of that, but that really aims to embed sustainability across education systems, ensuring that young people are both aware and are equipped with green skills. Second is localized and community-led learning initiatives and approaches. So sustainability, I believe, should be taught through lived experiences. In my work with my own grassroots nonprofit and its initiative called the Kahani Collective, we use storytelling-based approaches to connect rural communities with traditional and scientific knowledge. So we're helping young women learn about climate resilient approaches and farming, not just through textbooks, which, to be very honest, they don't really understand and comprehend, but through real life narratives, through art and storytelling. And third is leveraging the digital and media solutions for climate knowledge. That means many young women in the rural communities across the world, they don't have access to formal learning channels. Some of them can't go to school. So what do? They have access to what we call community radios in my country. These are localized radio stations. So what we can use those systems that are already existing to deliver bite-sized climate knowledge and lessons in local languages without really worrying about how do we put their new infrastructure in place. We already have them, so we just need to leverage that. Then there's WhatsApp-based advisory services that can really provide real-time agricultural insights in their languages. And then there's mobile-based micro-learning modules that UNICEF is doing with a lot of their programs, P2E. They teach young people about climate, about resilience, about adaptation. So that's something that also can be implemented to teach about sustainable practices in an engaging and accessible format. Fourth would be building economic linkages and green financing for women. We really need to know that knowledge alone is not enough. We need to supplement it with capital and with funding. And a lot of these young women need access to that, but they don't have it because sometimes they don't have bank accounts, they don't have resources. They are dependent on their partners or on male counterparts in the communities that they come from. So what has worked in my case and what I have seen is youth-led cooperatives. These cooperatives really help pooling financial resources and help these women to get the required tools that they need to access the channels, and then microfinancing and green loans. So that means loans designed specifically for these young women entering the sustainable and agri-food sector. So final thing is the networks that I'm representing. These are also great channels. So networks and platforms like the SU4 Youth and Student Network at UNESCO, they really empower young people to amplify climate knowledge and drive education reform. So as my colleague here said, and I will re-emphasize that, we need to adopt practical, localized, and technology-driven approaches, and we can ensure that women are not just learning about sustainability, they're really channeling it and implementing it, and are able to create and have a huge role in building climate-smart and resilient economies. Thank you.
You literally mentioned my favorite word. You said mainstreaming. We really need to mainstream education. We need to mainstream agri-food education. Also using non-traditional ways, for example, culture. For us at the World Food Forum Youth Initiative, it's fundamental to use universal languages like movie making or music and food culture. And from an Italian perspective, I can say that the food culture is very relevant to channel the agri-food system sustainability. So thank you, because also the way that you mentioned practical example in your local community show that young people, when are equipped with the knowledge, when we fill the knowledge gap we mentioned before, can really drive impactful initiatives in their communities, among their peers, and also among not their peers. We can also inspire older generation, actually. I would like to move to a second round of questions. I might be honest, we are running slightly late, so I will ask you to keep your answer under 2 minutes if possible. And the idea of this second round of questions is to understand a bit more about your youth-led organizations and groups, so that we can also inspire change and drive other young people and participants online to join this kind of collective movements. So first of all, let's start with you, Renata. I would like to ask you, how can youth involvement in policymaking, such as through the Major Group for Children and Youth, support the adoption of intersectional policies to sustainable development? And specifically, why and how we should use these intersectional approaches to really tailor training opportunities, educational programs to the needs of young women and of youth more in general?
Thank you. No, I'm super inspired by what I've heard so far, honestly. And yes, one of my hats here today is representing the UN Major Group on Children and Youth. I'll say it's one of the main channels that we have from the civil society youth space to get to these conversations that are closer to the United Nations. And within the UN climate space, we also have Yango, the youth constituency. So for me, that has been truly life-changing to be able to find channels to cooperate, precisely because of what you said, this word intersectional, which I don't hear enough from the governments and decision makers, but I think that's what youth bring. That's what youth bring in these spaces, because the youth leadership that we see at events, at conferences, local and global, it's very diverse. It's intersectional, and so people are bringing their different experiences, different representations, and that matters because of what I was saying before on the lived experiences. And what I could mention in terms of what we could do and kind of to inspire that next step, definitely finance is one of them, and resources, which I mentioned before, but especially because the data is quite scary in that sense. Global climate finance, it has about 2% of funding from global climate finance that's going to projects working on this intersection on growth and women and climate and agri-food systems. As I said, it is very niche, but how do you get beyond that? How do you break that barriers? Finance. And just to give a quick example on what I'm doing in Brazil with my NGO, with Info Data Clima, is with the little funding that we access. As we know, it's hard when you're a youth-led organization, we're all volunteers, but with the little funding that we access, we've been able to create mentorship programs, choosing and selecting young women that are incredible, doing incredible work in their rural communities, indigenous communities, but don't have these opportunities, mainly because of resources and sometimes language as well. So we provide scholarships, we talk to them and provide programs on how to do advocacy work, how to do personal branding, how to do climate public policy work. And through that, they can then channel that and multiply their work by doing their own programs in their spaces. But for that, you need funding, right? And it's the same when we go to schools as well. We choose local activists, local young leaders. We give them scholarships to go and talk to high school students about the work they're doing as well. So this is kind of a minor thing that we're doing, but imagine if we could scale that. I know education is something very long-term, right? We're talking about school curriculums and things that we can do to kind of build the new generation of climate leaders and champions and agri-food systems champions. But we need to start somewhere, right? And imagine if we had trillions of dollars being invested into this and governments advocating for growth education, for intersectional education that's prioritizing agri-food systems and climate. I think we could be somewhere very different and better than we are right now. But the main thing to remember is that later is too late. So it's something that we definitely need to do now. Thank you.
No, thanks to you. It was really, really well said. And we do agree that we need to also fill this gap. But it's important to continue talking about that, because if we continue our advocacy and we empower young people to advocate for these topics, we can also leverage on concrete support and resources leverage. So now we go to Anushka. I would like to ask you a bit more about the work that the UNESCO Youth Network does, and specifically with reference to Target 4.4, which calls for an increase in the number of youth with relevant skills, including technical and vocational skills for employment, decent jobs, and entrepreneurships. So I would like to ask you, how can youth-led platform, as the one that you are part of, can can contribute to young women opportunities to access this training, especially in rural communities?
Thank you so much for that question. I think I come with over 12 years now and counting of grassroots advocacy experience. So I have a lot of different solutions that I've laid out that would be helpful to the people listening, people who want to start their youth-led advocacy platforms or are working on them. So we need to understand that young women in these rural settings, they face a variety of different challenges. And so these can be social norms, mobility concerns, caregiving responsibilities, lack of gender responsive vocational education, or they're not able to access a training center because of the number of men that are registered. That's a reality. These women cannot enter those centers because of the norms, the patriarchy that's put in place in these communities. So we really need to think that with youth-led platforms, we have this added advantage that not only are we able to reach these hard to access spaces and rural villages, we're able to rethink the traditional models with our innovative approaches and leverage localized, low cost and technology driven solutions to really provide meaningful opportunities for engagement. So the first way that I use it with my own nonprofit is bringing training directly to the rural communities. Many young women are, as I said, not able to travel these long distances. So what we do is we establish mobile learning hubs, and these are not anything but tuk-tuks and rickshaws equipped with microphones and speakers. And then we have one trainer that goes on these rickshaws, and we reach these villages and we offer hands-on skill development. We offer learning materials, trainers, technology access like mobile phones and smartphones during the course of the class that we're providing every 2 weeks. So that's how we can actually reach these areas. Then creating community-based training centers. So really partnering with local cooperatives, women's self-help groups, and community centers can really provide a safe and familiar space where we can find these women. So we really don't have to go out there and look for these women, and we also don't need to have any external safety measures in place because we know this is where these women feel comfortable and can already be able to access these women communities. So programs can be embedded into existing social structures so that we can ensure that there is better participation and long-term engagement. Then is peer-led learning to scale impact. I think formal training programs are really expensive, especially for youth-led organizations that work on a very tight budget or maybe sometimes no budget. So a peer-led approach really ensures that knowledge remains within the community, at the same time continues growing within that community. So we use the train the trainer module, which is basically nothing but a peer-to-peer way of learning things, where every woman trained in our program commits to training at least 3 others in the same village. So that allows for rapid knowledge transfer and growth. And also we really don't have to rely on external trainers if they would be available, if we have the budget to hire them. That way as we continue on growing that progress. And then women-led mentorship networks, we also do this. So youth-led platforms, all these young people online who are listening to us, these are structured mentorship programs where women can really, who have successfully completed our training programs, can get access and guide new learners who are coming into the programs. And this not only builds skills, but also fosters the confidence and learning and just really reiterates the concepts that we try to teach them time and time again. Then the other thing that we used, when I was 17, I built an app that talked about all the 17 SDGs and how can young people imbibe them and put them to use in their community. So what we use is IVR, which is interactive voice response and chatbots. So in areas which has limited access to literacy, AI-driven voice systems can really guide women and girls and youth through lessons in their local languages, making learning more inclusive. And then I really need to emphasize this to everyone listening because we do get deterred because we don't have access to funding all the time. Youth-led platforms don't really need massive budgets. What we really need is strategic, sustainable, and community-focused innovative solutions because the most effective approaches that I have talked about don't really need larger budgets, but just innovative thinking. And that's how we can continue to drive growth for these women.
Thank you, and also for emphasizing peer learning approach because this is something we do really value. Sometimes we tend to value only mainstream knowledge, but actually we can learn a lot also from discussion. Today is extremely enriching, at least for me, and I am pretty sure that every participant online and in person is listening to different insights, and we can create a lot when we do not work in silos and we do collectively join for a common goal. So we are now to you, Sarah. I'm sure our participants would be interested in learning more about the World Food Forum Youth Initiative, and especially about the work that the Youth Assembly does, especially trying to understand how the Youth Assembly can empower young women in the agrifood system through its activities, and also how these advisory bodies can really support youth involvement in policy spaces.
Sure. So very proud to be here representing the World Food Forum Youth Assembly and very good company. I think really it is unique within the UN system, I think, to have this type of multi-stakeholder approach that really allows youth voices not just to be represented, but translated into something really actionable, really translated into tangible policy movement. And so I think that is really the value of these types of advisory organizations. We're able to lower the barrier to entry when it comes to participation in policy processes. We're able to have really widespread consultations, but really narrow and targeted focus areas when it comes to action. And I think that that is the model that I hope is replicated when we look at engagement at the national level as well. I think we're already able to see that through the engagement of the national chapters, and how having that multi-stakeholder approach really allows all of the voices that need to be there to come to the table without that high barrier to entry. And so I think when it comes to these types of advisory bodies, when it comes to the Youth Assembly, the opportunity is that it allows for co-creation of these policies and programs with the end users. I think quite often I'm sure there are tables where there's lots of discussion happening on how do we engage youth, how do we engage young women, what are the policies that address it, and it's not until those programs are rolled out that the feedback loop starts to happen with what needs to change. And I think we're all under a deadline to see consistent change, to be able to meet the goals we're going towards. And so we need to be really strategic and avoid maybe super long iterative processes, and actually co-create and have those end users as part of the process. And I think that's what the Youth Assembly really is able to deliver. And I think that is why I'm very excited to be here and to be part of it.
Thank you. I agree. Like when we ask how we can involve youth, is because we are not really asking youth to be involved. Like if we ask, they usually respond, and we can see it with this kind of webinar. We are really having major participation, and I think both the Assembly and the national chapters are great examples of how when we make the right questions, we do receive a feedback, and we do receive the opinions from young people. I have one final question for you all. I would kindly ask you to give only a one-sentence answer before we move to the open floor discussion. The question is, it has been acknowledged that the exchange and collaboration among stakeholders, you also mentioned it today, it's fundamental for doing collective action. So what is the key lesson that you have learned in your advocacy work that you would like to share with other youth-led organizations, which can really make their work more impactful? Like, I think we can start with Renata. Yes, we can follow.
Okay, once I had 5 so I'll try to make them one sentence. But I wrote collaboration. No one does anything alone, so count on us and let's work together. Persistence, we're trying to achieve systemic change. Inclusivity, bring everyone on board as agents of change. Tailored trainings, as we've discussed, education, and leveraging data. There's so much good data out there. So in that conversation of how we switch kind of our narrative to talk to different stakeholders, use data. It's out there. The facts are out there. We just need to reflect them and bring the resources where they need to be. That wasn't one sentence, but it's okay.
Very well said in kind of one sentence, so it's still perfectly okay.
Very quick.
Thank you, Renata.
Thank you.
Anushka, let's go to you.
I think the one thing that I swear by is intergenerational knowledge exchange, and this dialogue in itself is such a powerful example of that. When we combine new innovative ideas with what has already worked for centuries and decades, we really come up with solutions that are so strong and tangible. And then the second thing is to prioritize community knowledge, and that is moving away from the top-down approach, ensuring that those people that are at the bottom of the chain are included and heard.
Thank you.
Speed round, okay. I think really it comes down to we need to communicate as you said and combine our efforts. I think we sometimes are missing out and diluting the impact of what we can do by trying to solve 100% of the issues when we could actually be making meaningful change on 80%. And so I think we really have to focus on outcomes over ownership over the solution and move forward as a collective.
This is incredible. You all stick to the one sentence, and we have a very good approach. We must work collectively, and this is a great example of collaboration between youth-led organizations, to be honest. It's now time for our open floor discussion. This is an opportunity for youth participants online, especially for representatives of youth-led organization, to directly engage with our discussion. We wanted to keep this conversation as open as possible. So we invite you to share your thoughts and policy recommendations and experiences on how we can advance gender equality through education and training in agri-food systems. So all the insights that we are sharing today, also through the open floor, but also through the previous platform we used, will form our youth recommendation paper that we will hope to present at the high-level political forum, as mentioned before by my colleague. And today we will also officially launch the public call for inputs, which is going to be online, and it's going to also be soon shared on in the webinar chat. But the guiding question for intervening right now is, how can youth advocacy effectively leverage the SDGs, and particularly in the context of education and training, to empower young women in agri-food systems? And what successful practices from your experience can help transition from advocacy to policy and ultimately to action? So I will now start calling upon pre-registered speakers. But feel free to register for the speaking list by writing to the co-host, David Giles, in the webinar chat. So first of all, I would like to remind you that everyone has 90 seconds to intervene. This is in the interest of time. And please also try to stick it to it so everyone can express their thoughts. So the first one to intervene is Ms. Tamisha Lee, who is the president of the Jamaica Network of Rural Women Producers, and is also the representative today of the World Farmer Organization and the Women Committee of WFO. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished guests. My name is Tamisha Lee. I am a farmer from Jamaica and the president of the Jamaica Network of Rural Women Producers. I have the honor to represent the World Farmers Organization in this discussion. I sincerely thank FAO and the World Food Forum for highlighting the crucial topic at CSW69. At WFO, we recognize that empowering youth, including young women, through education and training is essential for resilient and sustainable agri-food systems. In fact, women farmers face unique challenges from access to land and finance to education and technology. Through initiatives like the WFO Gymnasium, our leadership program for young farmers, we equip them with skills, networks, and opportunities to thrive. This commitment is also reflected in the recently adopted WFO position on women farmers, calling for policies and investments that ensure women in agriculture can lead, innovate, and contribute fully to food security and community development. Also, as co-chair of the UN Decade on Family Farming, we actively promote the participation of women, particularly young women, farmers in key policy processes, ensuring they have a platform to make their voices heard and contribute to shaping the future of family farming. Let's move from learning to leading, ensuring that young people can express their full potential and that young women farmers can be not just beneficiaries, but active change makers in agrifood systems. Thank you for giving me a listening.
Thank you for sharing. We now go to Olivia Melanson, the Logistics Officer of the McGill Youth Advisory Delegation, who's joining us online. Olivia, over to you.
Thank you, Martina. So again, my name is Olivia Melanson, and I'm speaking on behalf of the McGill Youth Advisory Delegation. The Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDGs 4, 5, and 8, provide a critical framework for empowerment within agri-food systems. However, they are not enough. Agri-food systems span a vast array of sectors, and women are integral to every stage, from production to processing to distribution. Yet, universal frameworks often overlook the economic, social, and cultural realities that shape these systems. To foster true empowerment, advocacy and policy discussions must center the voices of those most impacted. Youth must therefore ensure that initiatives are led by these women for these women. If policy and action don't actually benefit those impacted, are they not then just a facade? For long-term goals of empowerment to be met, context-specific initiatives must be used strategically. Technical training and educational programs centered around sustainable practices, climate resilience, and leadership can equip women with the knowledge and confidence to innovate and thrive in agri-food systems. Additionally, microfinancing opportunities tailored for specific needs will contribute to fostering economic independence and long-term food and job security. Internal and external barriers must both be addressed to ensure sustainable empowerment. If we are to build resilient, equitable agri-food systems, we must move beyond rhetoric and take bold, inclusive actions. Let us not just speak about empowerment, let us create it together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olivia, for sharing. And we would like now to listen to Ms. Francesca Sabbia, representing the national chapter of the World Food Forum in Italy.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Martina, and to the organizers of this panel. I'm Francesca Sabbia, and I speak today on behalf of the World Food Forum Italy chapter. It is an honor to discuss such a topic on the margins of the 69th edition of the Conference on the Status of Women. We stand at a crucial turning point in shaping gender equality within the agri-food systems. Yet, despite their vital role, women still encounter systematic barriers worldwide. To drive meaningful change, we must prioritize first, gender-responsive policies and measures like financial access, equal opportunities, and land rights for women. Moreover, we should enhance resilience-building educational programs and stronger institutional partnerships, like including cross-sector collaborations and bottom-up context-specific solutions to empower these women. The SDGs are a shared responsibilities. As young advocates, we must push for change now, transforming this sector for the better. Youth organizations must amplify the voices of all women, engage with institutions, and hold governments accountable. We must ensure young women within the agri-food system are empowered throughout tailored workshops, skills development initiatives, and the promotion of best practices, while looking ahead to the future generations of women in the sector of agri-food, as the World Food Forum Italy chapter and its working groups are currently aiming to do. In closing, women are not just the future of agri-food system, they are the present now. Let's support their leadership, listen to their voices, and build an inclusive, sustainable agri-food system for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca, especially for representing the national chapter of Italy, which is an excellency in our network. And despite being recently created, it's really leading change in our territory.
Thank you.
So I'm really glad to pass the word now to Marina Calvino, speaking on behalf of the Committee on Food Security. Marina, over to you.
Thank you, Martina. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Congratulations to all speakers for such an inspiring discussion. I said I'm Marina Calvino, working at the UN Committee on World Food Security, which is the most inclusive global platform where government, international organizations, civil society, private sector, and research organizations come together to create global food security nutrition policies. Today, I'd like to introduce two key tools that can drive gender equality in agri-food systems, which are the CFS voluntary guidelines on gender equality and women's and girls' empowerment in the context of food security and nutrition, and the CFS policy recommendations on promoting youth engagement and employment in agriculture and food systems. Both these CFS policy products are vital tools for achieving SDG 5, gender equality, SDG 4 for quality education, in addition to the SDG 2, because they advocate for gender responsive education, leadership opportunities, and resource access by empowering young women to thrive in agri-food systems. And both these policy products, like all CFS policy guidance, were developed through inclusive multi-stakeholder processes involving governments, youth, and women's groups, and experts, among others parties, in a shared effort to break down barriers for youth and women in food systems. In my experience, to contribute to your discussions, youth advocacy can leverage the SDG 5 and 4 by directly engaging with national and regional policy processes and pushing for the uptake and use of these CFS gender voluntary guidelines or the youth policy recommendation, because their implementation will ensure youth-specific and gender-responsive education and training programs and support the formalization of youth leadership roles in agriculture and food systems, and in the end, drive sustainable food security solutions. So as young leaders, as you are, as agents of change, as you want to be, I really encourage you all to take these CFS policy tools with you and use them for advocacy in your own communities and countries, because this framework are powerful allies in your and our efforts to empower girls and promote gender equality in agri-food systems. So through our typically CFS inclusive approach, we are working. I'm finished. I'm finished. We are working with several youth constituencies and platform, including the WFF and the Youth Policy Board, to turn this advocacy into action. So join us. So I invite you to join these efforts in changing the world together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we can now move to Isnawati Dahaya, who is the member of the World Food Forum Young Scientist Group, and she's also one of the experts who participated to the expert group meeting on SDG 5 the last January. Hi, Isnawati, over to you.
Nice to meet you all. Thank you. I'm Isnawati Hidayah, speaking on behalf of Young Scientist Group World Food Forum. Sadly, young people are the sandwich generation to the agri-food system. We carry the burden of past generational shortcomings, striving not only to survive and thrive, but also to restore and safeguard the system for the future. Young women are trapped in this cycle and must fight to survive and break free. To empower young women in agri-food system, we must promote evidence-based policy recommendation to policymakers, especially on providing access to education and skill training to them. This equips them with the essential tools to navigate their needs and optimize the use of current technology like ICT to combat gender inequality and hunger, especially in those in rural setting. By improving their skills, we can empower, help them earn a living, and strengthen their bargaining power within both their families and society. And in my experience as the representative of Young Scientist Group World Food Forum, this topic were brought up during the General Expert Meeting of the UN Women 2025. This issue were accommodated and aligned with other expert views, and it will contribute to the July UN High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. Moreover, my team and I in Indonesia conduct research. Our finding highlights that the hidden poverty vulnerability of women and young women, especially household heads in agri-food system, is very crucial. To address this, we have implemented various virtual knowledge transfer programs, providing free access to valuable knowledge and networking. This initiative ensures young people, young women feel valued, heard, and recognized. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and also for bringing the expertise of the Young Scientists Group of the World Food Forum to the table today. It's really important for us to spotlight the amazing work you do every day. So let me now go to our next speaker, who is Ms. Masabata Sebusi, the founder of AgriVuno. Over to you.
Good evening to all the excellencies and distinguished guests. My name is Masabata Sibusi, and I'm founder of AgriVuno. I'm based in South Africa. So I think how we can leverage SDG 4, 5, and 8 is through access to education and training, particularly high quality gender responsive training in agri-food systems. And this can be achieved through policies or programs that are run by government and programs similar to what we do at AgriVuno, which is accelerating female farmer businesses, also looking into skills development. So how do we equip these women with relevant industry skills and insights that allow them to equip, grow and scale their businesses while giving them budgets and funding and the resources necessary to do that. We can also look to foster relationships and collaborations between the public and private sector, putting all stakeholders in the room as we're doing today, and looking at how we invest into youth-led and women-led initiatives within our respective parts of the world. We can look at also encouraging, participation and support within platforms similar to what we're doing today, talking about pressing challenges, sharing best practices, because I think the insights and value we're drawing from this conversation, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere else. And transitioning then from advocacy to policy would be providing evidence-based advocacy. So what proof, do we have that the programs that we're running or at all ends, are positively impacting the lives that we're working with? We need to amplify our voices, come together, as we've done today, to amplify the voice of youth in different aspects and parts of the world that we come from, because that is how the world will really start listening to women that are advocating for other women across the globe. We also need to, as we move, from policy right to action, is to not be all talk and no action, but to actually work in implementation of these policies, these programs that we're talking about, and highlight and spotlight them as much as possible. And I think I'm so grateful for this platform that has been provided today, sharing, celebrating, and really just speaking to what young women are doing across the country. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, and sorry to interrupt just for 1 minute. The open floor discussion, I would like to give the word to Ms. Angelica Gomez. Oh, sorry.
To the minister.
Okay. I thought we were doing a first stop. So apologies for interrupting. We need to change slightly our order of discussion, but we will get back to the open floor soon. So I would like to introduce Ms. Mamesa, who is the Minister of Consular from the Permanent Mission of Indonesia, who is going to deliver her closing remarks. And apologies if today the schedule has been a bit.
No, it's okay.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. A very good afternoon for everyone present here and also attending virtually. It is truly an honor for me to be part of this very important discussion. And first of all, I would like to extend my deepest appreciation to the FAO and everyone who's organizing this important event. And it's truly a privilege for me to hear all those powerful and insightful perspectives shared during this discussion. And I truly believe that this discussion has served as a purpose, as a platform to exchange views and good stories that inspired many. Indeed, with the 5 years towards the Achieving 2030 agenda, it is important to have all parts of the society towards the same spirit. I couldn't emphasize more on the importance of listening to the young people in this regard, and Indonesia has been an adamant supporter of this cause. We believe we should not only listen to young people, but also provide platform to shape policies and drive change. So this is truly exactly what we're doing today. And both in the national, local context, as well as in the international system. And just last week, I would like to share with you that we have one of our youngest parliamentarian, 20 years old, joining the parliamentarian session of the CSW to voice out our priorities in gender equality and women empowerment. Therefore, we value this event to promote youth perspective, empowering young women, particularly within agri-food system, an area which we put high priority. And allow me to share some takeaways. First, it is important to translating the discussion and commitment into real action. This past week, we have been talking and hearing the achievement as well as the challenges in achieving gender equality and women empowerment. We believe it is time to walk the talk and not work in silos. Our conversation today leads us to continue pursuing action that interlink different goals of SDG 2, 5, 4, as well as SDG 8. In line with priority area B of the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action. Indonesia translated this effort through fostering greater access to education and skill building that empower women and girls, including in research, entrepreneurship, and innovation in the agri-food sector, from family farming to agribusinesses. I would also emphasize that we must aim at the better utilization of technology, which young people could play a very important role in this aspect. Secondly, leveraging partnership with non-governmental actors, including youth initiatives and organizations such as WFF youth chapters. This will be instrumental in connecting the dots between initiative in one region to another. On this note, encouraging government support and collaboration with youth advocates could make the effort even further. The Indonesian government has been working closely with the Indonesian WFF national youth chapters to empower youth-led initiative, ensuring that youth are at the forefront of shaping the future agri-food system. One might have observed that countries are facing aging farmers' problem and challenges in sustaining agriculture sector. And from the discussion today, there are so many innovation, there are so many concrete action that have been conducted by the youth, especially the young women. So I think this is the time for the youth to make farming great again. and thirdly, ensuring collective efforts in building inclusive agri-food system. Investing in women equals investing in sustainable development, hence investing in young women equals investing in sustainable development for future generations. Empowering young women in agri-food system will not only contribute to their individual well-being, but also their communities and beyond. And I think the discussion has amplified that with the concrete action that has been conducted by many young women around this discussion. And distinguished panelists, colleagues and friends, in closing and moving forward, we hope that today's discussion could contribute to our joint efforts in ensuring no one is left behind in sustainable development. Furthermore, we also hope it could add towards a stronger youth advocacy towards ongoing major processes from the FFD4, World Social Summit, the second World Social Summit for Development, as well as COP30. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mamesa, and thanks also for all the support that Indonesia gives to our initiatives and the value that recognizes to youth voices in the country. The chapter in Indonesia is really remarkable experience for us, and every day they teach us, and we do a lot of peer learning in this, in how we can really create our own spaces of engagement within national government's platforms. So thank you so much, and apologies again for the delay. I think we can now go back to our open floor conversation. We will take around other 6 or 7 interventions. I would be now allowed to introduce Maureen Chezang, who is part of the Indigenous Women and Girls Initiatives and is also representing the World Food Forum Educators Network. Thank you, Maureen, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, and I am excited to be here today. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Maureen. I am a freelance journalist and communication officer with Indigenous Women and Girls Initiative. I am an educator within the World Food Forum Global Youth Action Initiatives Educators Network. This network supports educators through essential connections, tools, and skills to create and lead impactful education projects centered on agri-food system. As a board member of the Indigenous Women and Girls Initiative, I believe that empowering young women in agri-food system starts with education and action at the grassroots level. Our work focuses on training women in schools through 4K clubs on agroecology, equipping them with the knowledge to address climate change. We advocate for environmental restoration by empowering the next generation through hands-on training in food forest and kitchen gardens, directly addressing food security challenges. To effectively leverage on the SDGs, particularly in education and training, we must prioritize practical community-driven solutions. Our farmer training model is a prime example. We train farmer leaders who then train farmers in their communities, creating a self-sustainable chain of knowledge and action. We recognize that human activities have caused significant damage to our lands. However, we firmly believe in the power of restoration by empowering young women with the skills and the knowledge to practice sustainable agriculture. We can reverse this damage and return our lands to their original fertile state. Youth advocacy must focus on demonstrating real world impact by showcasing successful practices like our farming training model. We can bridge the gap between advocacy and policy, driving meaningfully change in agri-food systems. We are proud to be part of the World Food Forum Youth Educators Network and represent them today. Thank you so much.
Sorry, thank you so much for representing the World Food Forum Educators Network, and the work that you do there is really remarkable, and you are keeping inspiring each other and us. So thanks again. So we now move to Ms. Francesca Ricciardiello from the Young Ambassador Society.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the invitation and continued collaboration, and particular to Kazuki Kitaoka, Martina Borrello, Lorenzo Gentile, and Davide Agretto. I'm Federica Ricciardello, and I'm here on behalf of the Young Ambassador Society, a youth-led no-profit, working globally with institutions, including the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation, and responsible for the G7, G20 youth engagement groups for Italy. As yes, every year we conduct consultations with hundreds of youth associations worldwide. In one of our most recent surveys, we collected responses from 10,000 young people, highlighting climate change and sustainability as most pressing issues that world leaders should address. And the agri-food sector is at the heart of this challenge, not just for food security, but for sustainability, the inclusion, especially for young women who face barriers in education, training, and leadership. And as highlighted in the Y20 communique, we emphasize on recognizing agriculture as a pathway out of poverty, investing in youth training and entrepreneurship, ensuring young women see role models in the field, promoting sustainable and regenerative farming practices, and creating partnerships among educational institutions, agribusinesses, and NGOs to support young talent. On our side, we are committed to do our part, and last year we launched a project to involve 1,000 young people in policymaking, and it culminated in dialogues with ministers and policymakers. And we're very happy to expand the project with a focus on youth and the agri-food system, and of course in collaboration with the FIO. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Federica, and also thanks to Alberta, who's here today with us in person. The collaboration and the work we do together is, I think, really inspiring, and we continue growing together and learning from each other every day. We now can go to Marilu Suk, who is the co-founder and secretary general of the Network of Women in Aquaculture, who's joining us online. Okay, we might ask for your intervention later. Let's move to Ms. Caitlin Pamtran, who is the delegate from Harvard University and who's joining today as in person. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin Tran, and I'm part of the Harvard College Women's Center delegation. Women and girls disproportionately depend on agriculture as a source of livelihood, yet they systematically face discrimination by way of unequal labor conditions, earning 82 cents to the dollar and half the percentage of women having secure land rights compared to men. It is critical to underscore that uplifting women uplifts the globe. The FAO found that closing the gender gap in farm productivity and agricultural employment would lead to a global GDP increase of $1 trillion, as mentioned earlier, and lift 45 million people out of food insecurity. Firstly, to empower women is to safeguard their health. Lower literacy rates have left women less likely to understand pesticide labels compared to male counterparts, and underestimated exposure to pesticide application leaves women excluded from being invited to training on pesticide usage. The lack of access to information for women furthermore extends beyond pesticides. Research also shows that women are less likely to receive relevant information, preventing them from adopting climate resilient strategies such as agroforestry and sustainable land management. Empowering women with access to information is the first step, and a study in India has shown that women with access to agricultural information were more involved in agricultural decision-making. In conversations around education and training, however, gender inequalities in agri-food systems more broadly connect to other inequalities, including the gender digital divide, which needs further attention. The multiple roles that women are burdened with inside and outside of the household means that having the time for education and training is a luxury. It should not be a luxury. It should be a right. In conclusion, solutions must lean on addressing systematic disparities at its root, such as the solutions proposed today, like setting up access to bank accounts, expanding access to community radios. And with these solutions, we can truly achieve the FAO's objective of better nutrition, better production, better environment, and better life, leaving no young women and girls behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and also thanks to the whole Harvard delegation who's following online. I have been in contact with so many of you over the past few days, and I'm really happy to know that we managed to engage in this meaningful conversation. We would like to listen to Ms. Sandra Poldo Ruizzi, who is the founder and managing director of Kijana Factory and who is joining online.
Hello, thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Sandra Porohizi, and as a girl with passion to transform agriculture in my country, Tanzania, I have this dream to break the poverty chain through agriculture transformation. Through my organization, Kijana Factory, we work to bridge gender gap in agriculture by transforming substance to commercial farming, by ensuring women farmers gain the skills and training to transform their farm into business. So in African contexts, where agriculture is not only the backbone of most economies, but also critical pathway for addressing poverty and hunger, youth-led advocacy efforts are central to accelerating gender equality and sustainable food system. By focusing on SDG 2, SDG 4, SDG 5, and SDG 8, young advocates create meaningful, localized solutions that bridge the gender gap between policy and grassroots action. Youth can leveraging SDGs through education and training by promoting inclusive agriculture education, like what you're doing in Kijana Factory. We're promoting financial system education and organic farming education to ensure we change the narrative of farming not to ensure we create sustainable income to the farmers who can able to add value to what they produce. And also by championing vocation and entrepreneurship training programs, we're focusing with equipping young women with practical skills like sustainable farming, techniques, and agri-techs, and also financial literacy. And also we utilize the digital platform and technology to enhance access to training and education, especially in rural areas, aligning the SDG 4s and by ensuring no one is left behind. So how can we advocate to policy influence? We have seen the challenge that most of smallholder women farmers in our communities, and especially in my country and also African context, they only limited to production, but also they're not engaged in additional value. So what we are doing when we provide them with the training, we also record the data. So we can ensure we change from advocacy to policy by ensure we engage evidence-based advocacy. So we collect the data of how many people we transform from where we found them and where they are right now. So through those data, we challenge the policymakers to support smallholder women farmers and also their business. And also through collaborating with government agencies and institutions, for example, partnering with BRERA here in Tanzania, we provide women with knowledge and on formulating their businesses. And also through such collaboration, youth advocates can push for simplified and affordable business registration process that supports women entrepreneurs. And by participating in policy-making spaces at national and regional level, such as Agriculture Policy Forum and CSO's networks, to present youth and gender-focused perspective, we ensure these women farmers get support from the policies to ensure the country provides the policies that support our women smallholder farmers who want to transform from the subsistence farming to commercial farming by providing the easy way for them to grow and sell their products in not only local but also international markets. And moving from policy to action, once the policies are shaped.
Sorry to interrupt you. We need to move to the next speaker, but thank you for intervening. And also I would like to take the occasion to mention that we are opening a call for inputs, which is publicly available. Everyone can input in that. It's a structured call for input, and we really invite everyone because there was an enormous number of people asking to intervene, and we are so glad for this engagement. So please try to collect your youth organization input, your individual inputs, and present them online so we can use them for writing and refining our youth recommendation paper. All the details are better explained there, and I believe the link is now in the chat, where it might also okay, perfect. Okay, so the link is in the chat. You can access it, and for whatever information, there are the contacts for reaching out to us. I'm gonna tell you that we are gonna only take one other intervention from the room and one from online. So I'm calling the last online speaker, who is Aurora Delia Asmaraputri, who is part of the World Food Forum Youth Food Lab and Eco Living Community. Hi, Aurora, we cannot hear you.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity, dear esteemed panelists and fellow youth advocates. Hello, my name is Aura Adelia, and I'm the Eco Living Community Representatives. As a participant in the World Food Forum Youth Food Lab last year, I have witnessed how education and hands-on training equip young women to lead change in agri-food systems. But beyond technical knowledge, the greatest lesson is that young women, regardless of their background, can be change makers. I come from a psychology background, yet I contribute to sustainable agriculture and food systems through eco-living community. My journey proved that women from all disciplines, science, business, social studies, have a role in shaping a more sustainable food system. To move from advocacy to policies and action, we must prioritize. The first one is inclusive education and mentorship. that equip young women with leadership and agribusiness skills. The second one is cross-sector collaboration to ensure policies provide equal access to land, finance, and decision-making spaces. And the last one is youth participation in governance, ensuring the young women's voices are heard in shaping food systems. My experience with eco-living and the Youth Food Lab has shown that when youth are included in decisions making, we can influence policies that directly benefit young women in agri-food systems. We are not just beneficiaries, we are leaders and problem solvers. So let's build a future where every young woman has the opportunity to innovate, lead, and transform agri-food system, not just as participants, but as decision makers. Thank you in advance.
Thank you, Aurora, also for very well channeling the idea of learning then to lead. This is a very key message today, and I'm glad to introduce to our last speakers, who are our youth delegates today in the room. I'm giving the floor first to the youth delegates of Ireland, Ms. Lauren Brennan-Jones, and then to Mr. Oscar Lovett, the United States Youth Observer. Thank you for joining us today in person.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, young leaders.
Yeah.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, young leaders. My name is Lauren Jones Brennan, one of Ireland's UN Youth Delegates, and I will be delivering a joint statement on behalf of myself and the youth delegates of Czechia, Malta, Peru, and the United States. The successful integration of young women into leadership roles within agri-food systems is a fundamental necessity for securing global food systems and empowering communities at the regional level. Women's active involvement is key to strengthening local communities and fostering gender equality within agricultural leadership. To achieve this, we must create safe and inclusive spaces for young women to learn, grow, and acquire essential skills needed for the 21st century. These include digital literacy, entrepreneurship, management capabilities, financial awareness, and in-depth knowledge of the agri-food sector. Formal and informal education systems must work in tandem to provide these opportunities. It is equally important to support investments in youth and women-led initiatives, including startups, that foster innovation and give women the chance to collaborate and exchange knowledge. Peer-to-peer and women-to-women mentoring play an important role in building confidence, sharing invaluable experiences, and paving the way for young women to achieve leadership positions in the agri-food domain. Hermina Magwif.
Hi, my name is Oscar Lopez, and I serve as the UNA USA Youth Observer to the United Nations. As Valerie Gonzalez, founder of the Laredo Community Fridge in my hometown, reminds us, a sustainable food system is one that guarantees food security and nutrition for all. But right now, that is far from reality, especially for Black and Latina women who face compounded inequities in pay, wealth, and access to resources. We're meeting at a time when women's rights are facing significant backsliding across the world, including in my own country, where access to education, economic opportunity, even bodily autonomy are under threat. This is not just a policy failure, it's a failure of morality, and one we cannot afford to fight. We cannot afford in the fight for food security, climate resilience, and economic injustice. When women lose access to essential rights and resources, they face greater economic instability, higher rates of food insecurity, and fewer opportunities to break cycles of poverty and exclusion. We cannot talk about food security without talking about gender and racial justice. In the US, Black women are disproportionately affected by food insecurity, not because of individual choices, but because of policies that have long created barriers to progress. Addressing how food insecurity disproportionately affects women and people of color is not about ideology, it's about basic human dignity. It's about recognizing reality and taking concrete steps to dismantle the barriers that perpetuate poverty, hunger, and exclusion. I look forward to continuing to learn from the amazing and inspiring women in this room. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining the conversation, and the amount of people who wanted to intervene really shows that there's a lot to say and there's a lot to do together. So I do reiterate the invite to join our consultative process and to submit your inputs online. I'm now leaving the floor to Mr. Kazuki Kitaoka for his closing remarks. He's the director of the Field Office of Youth and Women. We are really delighted to have you closing this very important session today.
Yeah, thank you, Martina. And it's hard to follow after such a group of young leaders bringing all of these different ideas and thoughts to the table. I'm not even going to attempt to wrap up in the sense of summarizing all of the different points that were made. What is for sure clear is that youth-led initiatives like this are important and are essential for creating the type of future we would like to see in the agri-food system and for our the future of our food. And one thing that is also very clear, I think, is that there's an urgent need to expand access to quality education and training for young women in agri-food systems. I think this was underlined by all of the speakers today. And we have this year-long process that Lorenzo was describing at the very beginning to capture even more of your voices. All of these inspiring examples that we have heard from around the world. One inspiring example I thought was the use of AI that you're working on. So technology and agriculture actually comes together hand in hand. This is not something that is only for agronomists or only for the farmers. No, this is really for all young people to consider as an important sector, as a sector that brings opportunities, a sector that is future oriented, and the sector that is going to feed the future of humanity. So this is a really important area. And of course, young women and young women leaders in particular play such an important role. And we should all together underline the importance of this process that we have here that will come up at the end with a recommendation that hopefully will also be listened to, and not only listened to, but also acted upon after the presentation of this paper at the high-level political forum. Now, perhaps let me just make three small points. One is, and that was mentioned before, the World Food Forum Youth Assembly is which is hosting this consultation on young women leaders and the importance of education and training this year. This assembly is truly unique. So this is something that in the UN system does not otherwise exist. A really structured, a really systematic way of bringing as many youth voices as possible from all countries, from all social backgrounds, from all professions into the different discussions, to have a systematic and structured understanding as well what the views are of youth at large from the different areas and perspectives and environments they are coming from. So I invite even more young people from all countries to participate even more in these discussions. This is a truly open platform for representatives to have your voice, to have discussions, to shape the policies that we would like to see that will shape the future of this important sector that will feed all of us and all of our children in the future. So and this call for youth representatives to the Youth Assembly is actually going to come out very soon. I believe next week or the week after, there will be an open call again for youth representatives to register in the Youth Assembly. So please share this with everybody you know or through all of your networks. We want this to be very, very inclusive and broad-based. Secondly, of course, this is an extremely important consultation. We have here as the discussion that was coming from the expert group meeting on SDG 5, now here at CSW69, and which will continue to the high-level political forum. But I would like to highlight that this consultation on young women empowerment specifically is only one of many thematics actually that we are working on. So there are other critical topics. The ambassador before, Ambassador Greco, was mentioning that there is a stocktake moment happening on the UN Food Systems Summit that's going to happen in July in Ethiopia. And for this important conference, the Youth Assembly, the World Food Forum Youth Assembly, has been also chosen as the constituency of choice for the summit to bring the youth voice to the table in Ethiopia. And for that, we are actually just now starting a consultation process. We had already some consultations. North America had it. I think also the Near East. There are consultations happening at the moment, and I really invite everybody who is interested in discussing the different policy areas which the UN Food Systems Summit and the different national pathways are touching upon to get involved and perhaps also participate in a preparatory youth conference, which is going to be organized in May in Bangkok, if for those who can make it in person, but also, of course, online. Secondly, we have a number of critical topics that are also following different consultation streams, including on biodiversity, environment, but also on fisheries, specifically looking at youth constituencies in this field, forestry, towards a conference on forests next year, and of course also the World Forest Congress, which is coming up in 2 years' time. We have also a consultation on livestock issues and more. So please get engaged. All of these different streams are available online on the website of the World Food Forum. You can find the information there. According to your interest and specialization and technical knowledge, get involved. We really would like to see here a diverse voice from young people, from farming, from fisheries, all the way to academics and those who are perhaps just interested in food as well. I'm also grateful for the presentations of the representatives of Italy and Indonesia that we heard before. They're really great supporters of the World Food Forum since the very beginning, and those two countries are really excellent examples of the World Food Forum national youth chapters, and we have heard a little bit about that before. These chapters are youth-led agri-food platforms that are being created at the country level. They're not created by FAO, they are created independently and by youth groups and youth networks themselves. We also want that specifically to be independent platforms and chapters. And these chapters are not only country-led, but they are also supporting youth innovative ideas and solutions at the country level, just like the organizations we also heard from today during this important consultation. I just gave a couple of ideas about what the Italian youth chapter is doing. They were established in 2024, so it's very new and grew extremely fast into a full-fledged chapter, and it has shown a lot of dedication to developing a comprehensive capacity development program through seminars and campaigns, and it's actively engaging and raising awareness on sustainability and food security amongst Italian youth. And additionally, the chapter is advancing research and analysis in these different areas of agri-food systems and is promoting innovation through that. The Indonesian chapter also was officially launched last year in October, actually at the World Food Forum flagship event as well. And it has been developing its programs aligned with the FAO 4 betters. That's better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life, leaving no one behind. So these are really great examples as we think. And in concluding, I would like to thank both Italy and Indonesia, but I would also like to show that there are many, many other chapters that already are blossoming around the world. And for those who have not yet created a national chapter, we invite all countries and also all they can also be done at the subnational level. If it's a big country, India, United States, and other places, Canada, there might be a call for subnational chapter possibilities as well. So we invite really everyone to get involved. This is an opportunity for young people to have the voice at the policy level, but also to create education programs, to create innovation programs, to embrace youth culture and perhaps create new dialogues on agri-food system transformation and the future we would like to see, or you would like to see, for our food. And with that, I also thank the director of the FAO Liaison Office for hosting us today. And we are, I think, about 45 minutes late, so I'm going to stop here. And this delay also shows how much there is to talk about in this important topic. And I also thank, of course, all the speakers who were here today, all the speakers online as well, and of course also Martina for the very able. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing many of you again at the different youth assembly consultations and also at the forthcoming ECOSOC Youth Forum and other occasions that we will have in the near future. With that, back to you, Martina, and thanks a lot again.
Thank you so much, Kazuki, especially for leading and for continuing remarking how the platform we have at the World Food Forum Youth Initiative is unique and is open to everyone. So we should take all the benefits from it, trying also to expand its networks and its reach through national chapters. Let me thank you once again for being here. Distinguished speakers, panelists, and participants online. Thank you, everyone. It was a very inspiring conversation, and I will tell everyone that this is why we finished 45 minutes late. It was really inspiring to hear you all, and I look forward receiving all the inputs from your youth-led organizations and groups to our call for inputs online. And we hope to see you soon in April at the ECOSOC Youth Forum, where we will continue this very meaningful conversation. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.